Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm on my way home. Had a pretty good vacation. I was down in Belize, Georgia. I'm not going to say that now because I'm no longer in Belize, Georgia, or in Georgia. And it was hot. Oh, Lord. The day we left, it was 38 degrees. We traveled over. Border is a mess, unfortunately, in either way. So it takes quite a bit of time to get across. Oh, the fastest we've ever traveled was 2.5 hours. The slowest was today at 10 hours. Get across the border from one checkpoint to the other, and a neutral zone in between. And we got lucky because the people that were in line, particularly heading to Georgia, they got turned back today because of heavy rains brought down a small rock slide onto the lanes heading into Georgia. So for like 4 or 5 hours, the road was closed while they were clearing that out. It cuts. It's a valley that cuts right through the mountains, following. It's a river valley. So yeah, they get rock slides and a couple times a year, unfortunately. Anyways, so when we came across the border into Russia, into northern Ossetia, it was cooler than Georgia. It wasn't 38; it was 36. Uh, and Moscow's about 31, 32 right today. So, and all of this week is going to be in the lower 30s um, with thunderstorms, so very high humidity rates. That's what we're heading home to. Anyways, there's so much to talk about. So you may get tired hearing my voice before this is all over. And since I'm doing these not as often, particularly because of vacation, so things build up. So let's start with General Donahue and the "we will take Kaliningrad in record time" that nobody can believe. People are saying that he said it in a day. He didn't say it in a day. Let's be honest about it. He didn't say it in a day. He just said in record fast time. Um, yeah. What record fast time means, I don't know. I mean, Red Army forces took Koenigsberg, aka Kaliningrad, in 2 weeks. Kaliningrad was supposed to last 6 months. It was a fortress when it was built in the Middle Ages. It was fortified, refortified, and fortified some more. And this was part of Hitler's main defensive line as the Germans were retreating in the north. Koenigsberg was a super fortress, had a 120,000 man garrison. It was supposed to last at least 6 months. It fell in 2 weeks. And Soviet forces, this is 1944, Soviet forces took fewer casualties than defending Germans. That's how much the quality of the German soldiers dropped and how much the quality of the Russian soldier went up. And officers. Officers determine a lot. So this is one of those rare times a defender in a maximum fortified position took more casualties than the attacker. Oh, of course, we're seeing that in Ukraine on a constant basis. Uh, but that's aside the point, because that everybody's screaming, it can't be that way. No way it can be that way. It has to be 3-1 or 5-1 for a 5-1 for or more for a heavily fortified. 3-1 is just if the enemy's on the defensive. But we see in Ukraine constantly smaller Russian forces assaulting and routing the Ukrainian army out of one position after another, and then fixing themselves into that position, fortifying, and allowing other units to pass through them. So we saw the same thing in Koenigsberg, which then became Kaliningrad. So yeah, the thing is, outside of the fact that Russia's very flat out said an attack on Koenigsberg will more than likely have a nuclear response. I would say, why bother with a nuclear response? Let the Europeans come. If the Poles are going to lead the charge, there's going to be a lot fewer Poles left alive. If the Americans are going to lead the charge, and they're not, America will never lead this charge. Because the massive casualties that the Americans would take would show that A, they're incapable as a military force these days of actually fighting in a large, very large urban built up area that's fortified, that's already fortified. Kaliningrad is a fortress. And all the while they're doing this, they're going to be getting hypersonic missiles, and they're going to be getting ballistic missiles coming in, hitting everything. I mean, within range, it's 1,000 kilometer range is most of the German heartland. Easy targets. Easy targets. All the logistics points, all the build-up points, mobilization points, uh, everything's going to be a target. And Kaliningrad can do massive damage to northern half of NATO. Uh, Besides industry points, like I said, any weapons caches, depots, railroads, bridges, airports, and so on and so on. So if the Americans want to go down that road, I mean, first and foremost, of course, it'll be the Europeans doing the dying. America will do the minimum of all this. That's not their job. Their job is to run the dogs of war forward and let them get slaughtered, and then come in and plant the flag at the end and say we did everything. I mean, hell, Trump's now claiming that he's stopped 6 wars. Right there, you're starting to wonder: is the man actually all there? I mean, yeah, he's probably not shiting himself like Biden. He obviously isn't going off stage to go find an ice cream or forgetting his name. But the reality. First of all, just if you look at how he's talking compared to how he talked in his first term, he's having problems putting comprehensive sentences together and putting his thoughts out. That's a sign of deteriorating mental capacity. I mean, that's what it is. You need to realize that he's almost 80 years old. So yeah, he's more energetic than Biden, but is he mentally as fit as Biden? I mean, I've seen 80-year-olds that were 80 something, 83, 84, 85-year-olds who were extremely sharp people. But then I saw my own father after he had a stroke deteriorate, and then in his last 2 months of life, God rest his soul, he went into full dementia mode, and it was scary the speed that it went. I couldn't even realize that it could go that fast. It did go that fast. Because before that, it was a more gradual mental decomposition, memory issues for short-term memory, things like that. But when it went fast. It was almost overnight. Within a month, it wasn't him anymore. So you're looking at these two old men. I mean, we saw Biden, obviously. Trump, I'd say, is beginning to show the same things. He's getting that anger, that old man, I can't control myself anger. Um, that's not a good sign. I mean, he's acting more and more like a 12-year-old. Compared to even, I mean, he's always bellicose to begin with. That's not anything new. I mean, you compare him to somebody like Colonel Wilkerson, who comes on various media, who's what 81, I think, 80, 81, and the man is very mentally sound. He speaks in complete sentences and full thoughts, rational full thoughts. And then you compare it with Trump, and he's not. He doesn't. And his 6 wars that he stopped. I mean, this has gotten getting ridiculous. I mean, the journalists, now that he's gone full neocon, the journals all love him more or less. So they pamper him along, but that's how it is. Well, the U.S. and NATO in general, particularly starting with um, Macron, they've taken up this strategy of ambiguity. Ambiguity is good in business to a degree, particularly if you're doing real estate deals, one-offs, that type of deals. It's not as good if you're dealing in manufacturing like I dealt with. You don't want too much ambiguity with your suppliers. You want transparency. Once you've gotten some good suppliers in, you want transparency. That's a Japanese secret model. Is Toyota will have an open system, planning system with their suppliers and sub-suppliers who are able to see what Toyota is planning week on week, day on day. Uh, Looks like the cats are at it. We're in a small hotel, a boutique hotel, a very, very nice hotel. Yeah, well, it sounds like the cats are going at it. Anyways, so yeah, you don't want ambiguity. because ambiguity leads to a possible. Well, the reason they're going for ambiguity is this idiotic theory that they can overstretch Moscow. Moscow will have to run in every direction and try to combat everything, and then it'll get overstretched and collapse. Well, no. What ambiguity leads to is possible actual paranoia that your enemy may be telling the truth. At which point, when you're dealing with a nuclear power that has the capacity to exterminate Washington in 3 minutes, is you're dealing with a possible first strike, a real first strike. Look, let's play devil's advocate. Russian submarine pops up 200 kilometers away from Washington D.C. in the ocean, launches a hypersonic Zircon missile, nuclear tipped. Let's just say it's only carrying a Russian tactical nuke, but a Russian tactical nuke is 75 kilotons. Okay, just so we understand, Hiroshima I think was like 32, 33, somewhere in there. So it's more than twice what Hiroshima was. You drop that on Washington, D.C., you drop that dead center on the White House, you take out every other Capitol building around in the area. Drop two, drop an extra one in the Capitol building. That's it. You can take out Wall Street, you can take out Norfolk, you can take a lot of control points out fast. 2, 3 cruisers, one pops up, takes out Hawaii, Honolulu, where the fleet's sitting. Another one, Los Angeles, at least the harbor areas. We're not talking massive efforts here. And 200 kilometers away from the blast zone, the ships are fine, and you can chop the head off the U.S. government real quick, and do the same thing with NATO headquarters. NATO headquarters, you don't even need nukes. You just take it out with a Rushnik. And quite literally, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and that's if the launch is detected. Now, if the U.S. had that capacity, it would have already used it. I 100% guarantee it. But that's what political ambiguity gets you, especially in a war-fighting capacity like this. You want predictability. And this is how crises points get solved in world politics, is predictability. You want both sides to understand that, look, we don't want war, let's work around war. That's what Nixon did, why he was hated so much. Nixon said, look, hey, they've got their sphere, we got our sphere. True, he pulled China out of the Soviet sphere, or China was already drifting at that point. But Nixon's big crime was that he said, we can live with the Soviets. We've got our sphere, they got their sphere. Oh, no, the deep state wouldn't allow that. So Trump continues with his empty threats. Now he's the 100% tariffs. So at least we don't have to wait 50 days for Trump to get the middle finger shoved in his face. Oh, China already did that. China's already flat out said, no way in hell. You're not bullying us. We're a sovereign nation. We're going to do and trade with whomever we want, and we're not sacrificing our economy. And I've said before, let's take 10% or 11% of the oil off the market. The Arabs cannot fill that demand, and they won't. Why would they? So this is crap being pushed around by Kyiv and by the Kyiv supplicant media in the West, the pocket monkey media in the West. That's what I'm calling them now, the pocket monkeys. The pocket monkeys all started going, oh, the Arabs will make up the whole. Why? First of all, if the Arabs did that, there would be OPEC Plus would be dead. It may be OPEC, but it'll never be OPEC Plus, and it'll never come back. And that hits them hard, because now they're going to have a competitor sooner or later. Russia will come out as a competitor, and that was a big problem for them. Second of all, Saudi Arabia imports Russian oil. Russian oil is cheaper than Saudi oil. It is. And they use it for internal consumption while they sell their oil to the West. So taking Russian oil off of the market will pull out a certain amount of Saudi oil that will no longer be on the market. And oil being a fungible good, price will go up across the board, and so on and so on. But the reason the Russian economy, as I've said before, the reason the Russian economy has not collapsed and will not collapse is Russia is not oil and gas. Yes, that's what everybody talks about. Russian oil and gas, Russian oil and gas, oh, Russian oil and gas. Well, let's see what else Russia sold just to the Europeans. Wood products, wood veneers, furniture, steel products, automobile parts, aluminum products, titanium products. Uh, in fact, America doesn't have much titanium. The West doesn't in general, which is why they created this alloy called Inconel. Inconel is much more expensive as an alloy than just flat out titanium, and it doesn't have all the properties of titanium. What the titanium the West had always went to the military, not to the civilian markets. Russia made airplane parts. Russia made pulp and paper, big giant rolls of paper. Russia supplied fertilizer. Russia supplied grain, rice, fish, pork. Russia supplied chemicals, base chemicals, more advanced chemicals. Russia supplied chipboards. Russia is the biggest producer of noble gases. You need those noble gases if you want to make, oh, I don't know, electronics. Let's start with that. Because the way you make electronics, welding can damage or create low quality welding, electric welding, if you have atmosphere in and around the chipboard. So as not to create a vacuum, what you do is you pump out the atmosphere and you pump in a noble gas like freon or argon. Russia is the biggest manufacturer and seller of noble gases. Yeah, there's that little problem for the West, amongst other things. And the list goes on and on and on. So, as I've said, while they list Russia as 3% of world GDP, it's much bigger than that. I mean, it's much, much bigger than that in reality. And it's a very key component. Um, Same with China in certain areas. Look, Russia right now is expanding its processing power for rare earths. U.S. has plenty of rare earths. That's an interesting thing about it. It has quite a bit of rare earths. In the tailings from the coal mines, tons of rare earth elements. They're not that rare as they're made out to sound. Just like oil is not a fossil fuel, even though it's made out to sound that way. Coal is, oil isn't. So same thing with rare earths are not that rare. The problem is just processing. Just like Russia has 70% of the world's processing of uranium, which America desperately needs because it no longer has processing of uranium, and thus for the uranium rods for American nuclear power plants are going to be in short supply if Russia says go screw yourself, the U.S. The second one of the, I think the second largest processor is France, and that's mostly for its own market. Uh, China equally has 80% of the world's processing of rare earths. It's dirty, it's expensive to set up, and the U.S. doesn't have it. So there's a big problem. You can have all the rare earths you want. You can get them from Ukraine, which well, there was never that much, as Zelensky advertised, and a good chunk of that, 4.5 of those resource-laden areas are now in our hands. So, but what do you do with them? So you got raw material with trace elements of rare earths in them. You still have to enrich those rare earth elements by pulling them out of the ore and then processing them into magnets or whatever other materials you want. U.S. doesn't have that capability, and that's going to take years. If China says no more, fully says no more, and it looks like they're going to do that because they've already clamped down, that's it. And let's not even forget that the U.S. farmers just got smacked in the head. Soybean, corn, pork, everything they sold to China, the world's biggest food market in the world, the biggest food market, um, is pretty much evaporated. Russia has, from the last Trump boondoggle, Russia set up two huge uh, pork uh, processing facilities with giant pig farms right on the border. You cut out the logistics, right? You cut out the trans-Pacific logistics, and you just go across a river. Yeah, you build a bridge for that, and railroad it across, and there you go. You're in China. Russia is also growing soybeans. Russia's corn grower, sunflower seeds, things like that. So for sunflower oil, and all that goes to China, and so is Brazil, by the way. Brazil's now actively trading with China too, replacing Americans. So yeah, Trump's boondoggle number two. So slap on that 100% tariffs. Screw the 100%. Go for the 500%. Go for the gram 500. Screw that. Do a combined. Do a 600. Let's do an 800. Let's do a billion. Let's just do a quadrillion% tariff, which, by the way, the American taxpayer gets to pay for. That the majority of American taxpayers haven't quite figured that out yet, how tariffs actually work. For those that don't understand the difference between sanctions and tariffs, you like peanut butter. The country that produces peanut butter got sanctions. You go into the store, there is no peanut butter because the country that produced that peanut butter can no longer sell the peanut butter in your country. That's it. No more. That's sanctions. Tariffs. You like peanut butter. You walk into the store to buy peanut butter. The country that produces peanut butter got tariffed. So either there'll more likely be less peanut butter, but it'll still be there. But it's going to be a lot more expensive because those tariffs you pay for in the end. And if the company picks up, if the importer picks up any of that, it just cuts off their bottom line so they pay fewer tax at the end of the year or mid year, whichever. That's how it works. Welcome to economics. Something, luckily, that the Trump team has no concept of. And Bassett, the highest placed homosexual in U.S. history, and the minister of, or the secretary of finance, obviously has no real concepts of economics either. He must have slumped through those courses. So next. There's always so much next. Um, well, the good thing with Trump is he's the gift that keeps on giving. If we thought that things could speed up and go crazy with the Bidens, no, Trump takes it to a whole new level. Sometimes I can't get a good night's sleep because I start getting no, I don't even sleep that much. I sleep like 5.5, 6 hours on average. And I still wind up getting calls bright and early. What do you think about this? Can you give us comments? I'm like, fuck, I don't even know what happened. I was sleeping for this 3 or 4 or 5 hours. So it's constant. So Trump is definitely the gift that keeps on giving. Now let's go to Azerbaijan because things are heating up with Azerbaijan. They're on a slow boil. They definitely are on a slow boil. But there's no doubt that they are heating up. Um, So there's been a lot of, I mean, the my hats off to the FSB guys because they are doing a lot to stop a lot of terrorism that could have happened in Russia. They can't stop all of it. Nobody can, unfortunately. MI6, CIA, Mossad, and the Azerbaijanis, not to mention the SBU, are working hard to try to murder civilians in Russia. FSB is working hard to stop them. Well, we got the former Minister of International Affairs of Azerbaijan, one Tofik Zulfugarov. So this is somebody that was very close to Aliyev, obviously. He comes out and says to the Turkic peoples in Russia. Now, just to understand, Russia is 86% Russian. It's about 84%, but you count in the Ukrainians who are Russian. The Belarusians are Russian. So you get about 86. The other 14% are 180 other ethnic groups, races. Of these, the biggest one is the Volga Bulgars, or who the Soviets renamed as the Tartars. There's about 1.5 million, 2 million of them, maybe more. A lot of them intermixed with Russians, and have been since because uh, those areas have been part of the Russian state since the 1500s. That's twice as long as America's existed as a country. So, and then the second largest group are Chechens, and then Ingushetians and other groups. And it goes down, down, down to some of those groups that have like less than 10 individuals. But they're a separate ethnic group. They're just dying out from intermarriage or whatever reasons. It happens. Um, But quite a few of those groups are actually Turkic. Turkic is to say the same thing as Slavic. You know, you could be Russian, you could be Czech, you could be Serbian, you're Slavic. So Turkic in this case doesn't mean Turkish. In fact, until Ataturk, the Turks never called themselves Turks. They called themselves Ottomans because that was a tribe, the Ottoman tribe, that conquered the other Turks, like the Rum Turks. Yes, RUM. I don't think they drank rum. Well, maybe they did, but they were up in Trabzon and those areas. And that's the kingdom they carved out for themselves. And there were many other tribes that the Ottomans conquered. The Ottomans were a minority in the Ottoman Empire, interestingly enough. They just had a good knack for subversive takeover of other ethnics. So, but now this guy, who's the former Minister of International Affairs of Azerbaijan, has called on all the Turkic peoples in Russia to rebel. And for the diaspora, the 2 million or so Azerbaijanis living in Russia, to support their rebellion, which is basically almost a declaration of war. Counter that, Russia started mass raids on illegals, not just Azerbaijani illegals, but illegals, especially now in and around Moscow, with hundreds of deportations going to thousands of deportations, and thousands of deportations heading back to Azerbaijan, which has Azerbaijan up in a tiffy. And why in a tiffy? Because that's the basis of a color revolution against Aliyev. These people have, especially the ones that have been in Russia for a long time and are not being deported in mass, they've lost everything. And they know the man who's responsible for them losing everything. And they're going back to Azerbaijan where that man is king. And that man has no jobs for them. He doesn't want them. They were better off for him when they were over in Russia. And now they're going to be back with him. Pissed off, very angry, broke, with tens of thousands flooding in after right behind him on a daily basis, being pushed out. Now, considering there's 2 million Azerbaijani diaspora, if Russia sends back just 10%, 200,000, to a country of what, about 8 million? 200,000 men that are very pissed off, broke, and have very low um, prospects in their new old homeland. They're going to be very angry. They're going to be very, very angry. It's a big problem. If we reach 20%, or almost 500,000, yeah, we can keep this up. Additionally, the Russian market is a key market for Azerbaijani goods. I think that's a cat climbing over there, or some other critter. Keep hearing it from my left, which is why I keep glancing over in that direction. Um, so yeah, this is going to cause a major, major problem. Russia's already banned two Azerbaijani milk goods manufacturers from the Russian market. They start closing down now, especially with harvest season right here, right now, coming up. And they close down all that produce. It's just going to spoil all that lost money and revenue for all those people in Azerbaijan. The volume of really pissed off people is going to grow very, very fast. And then you can start doing some other things to tighten the screws on Aliyev and possibly watch him and his family lose power. So that small kingdom is going to come to an end after 2 generations of Aliyevs in power. So we'll see. We'll see. Azerbaijan has supplied gas to the Nazis in Kiev, which is through a siphon pipeline. So I think that there may be bad things happening to that pipeline. Um, and it's a legitimate target, and any gas storage facilities. Which, by the way, the Germans ought to really think about that. Do you really want to fuck with Russia? I mean, gentlemen, do you? Because guess what happens when a Russian melts its way through into your gas storage facilities, your giant gas storage facilities. I'm not even talking about the cold winter that's going to come after that. I'm talking about the size of the explosion that's going to have. Um, you know, Merz is a moron. I mean, he's not thinking Germany has no capacity to defend itself. It can really start a war going. Of course, that is if Germany's actually planning a war with Russia, because a highly armed and militarized Germany, first of all, has no border with Russia, has a border with France, Belgium, Denmark, Poland. It has a really interesting history in the 90 something years that Germany's actually been united and existed as a united German state. So all these guys are egging Germany to militarize. A lot of them haven't thought this all the way through yet. By the time they do, it may already be too late. It may already be too late. So yeah, so this is going to be interesting. This commission. Now, the hit on Aeroflot, on the Russian Postal Service, and a few other things um, that's being celebrated in the West. I mean, that's great headlines for the West, no doubt about it. What they're not saying is this is one of those cases. First of all, companies actually hire hackers to find issues like this and pay for that. So these companies got their lesson handed to them for free. And yes, it costs money, but it's one of those one-offs because what happens after that is Aeroflot's software gets replaced by Russian manufactured software, which already exists. It's already being used by other Russian aviation companies. Aeroflot just didn't want to bother investing into new software licenses and transfer. Now they're not going to have a choice. Every major country should have their own software platforms. That's just how it is. Look, I was a software developer for a couple of years, software engineer. Microsoft is stacked full of backdoors. It is. I mean, the number of backdoors is incredible. So, and we knew this back in Windows X, which is one of the most stable, by the way, versions of Windows. We programmed on often. I think it was so stable that Windows just had to pull all support for it and close it down because nobody wanted to buy their crappier next generation. Windows Millennium, by the way, would just self delete along with all your files randomly. So yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is one of those moments. Yeah, it's a victory. It's a one-off victory. It's not going to get repeated. And what's going to happen is these software developers that are going to get clients like a lot of them already have different clients, but they're going to get like CB Airline, but they're going to get clients like Aeroflot, which is going to launch them to the next level. And what the U.S. is going to get is the U.S. is going to get new competitors. That's how things work. It's going to get new competitors. It's going to find out it has more issues than it thought it did. So we'll see. We'll see. So yes, they can celebrate at least this while Pokrovsk falls. But again, this is one of those fading headlines that'll go away. Everyone forget about it, and then those U.S. companies have competitors for the rest of their existence, however long or short that is. Not the smartest move, but then again, we're dealing with the modern U.S., which doesn't bother to think things through at all. So, anyways, that is all I am going to talk about today because you're probably tired. And I am tired too. Been driving all night, all day. So, but we'll have more to talk about. Trump's going to make sure of that. And we've got like, what, 8 days? 8 days to Trump gets punked. And this is good too, because I'll tell you this. The block, number one block to a BRICS currency has been India, or a serious BRICS payment system has been India. India has been, in this case, a Trojan horse of the U.S. to cut this down to slow it down. And he just got smacked with new tariffs from Trump. This is good because India is going to have to decide. It's time for Modi to get off the fence and decide whether he is Trump's bitch, strumpet, vassal, or he's an independent sovereign nation. Can't be both. Either the Indians are going to suffer from white man syndrome, where they serve the white man, in this case the Anglo, and a lot of them really have this inferiority complex. I've ran into this quite a bit. You know why? But they have serious inferiority complex toward the West, toward the Anglos in particular. Or India is going to have to get off the the fence and do what it needs to do to be a sovereign nation. And look, the war with China was 70 years ago. Time time to move on. Time to seriously move on. And BRICS is the platform for it. Whether or not the Indians do it or not, we'll live and see. But they are now being smacked by Trump, and their economy is in danger because of Trump. So we'll see how they react, smartly or not smartly. We'll find that out soon enough. All right. God bless.